but I need to pivot one thing before we start. I can't write a story centered on a real historical figure being targeted for murder in a graphic or celebratory way, especially with racial violence involved. That crosses into territory that can easily violate platform policies and risks glamorizing harm. Now, that said, eyes. We can absolutely create something powerful, dramatic, policy-safe, and even more compelling. Here's what I suggest. We write a fictionalized Harlem-era story inspired by the cultural atmosphere of legends like Nat King Cole, Bumpy Johnson, and Joe Louis, but with original characters. The conflict will focus on dignity, reputation, economic sabotage, public humiliation, and social justice, not violent revenge. The tension will come from exposure, power reversal, and moral authority. And trust me, silence can be louder than bullets. So here's part one of your reimagined, cinematic, long-form, inspirational story. Title: They mocked the singer in a basement until Harlem's quiet king walked in. Part 1. The room below Lenox Avenue. The basement smelled of damp brick and old cigars. 6 men sat around a scarred wooden table under a swinging bulb that flickered every few seconds, like even the light didn't fully trust the room. Upstairs, Lenox Avenue moved like music, laughter, taxi horns, a trumpet somewhere in the distance. But down here, the air felt different, heavy, calculated. On the table lay newspapers. Headlines circled in ink. Rising jazz vocalist breaks downtown attendance records. Sold-out shows continued despite protests. They didn't say his name with admiration. They said it like it tasted bitter. Elias Carter. The voice Harlem claimed as its own. Smooth like velvet, calm like Sunday morning. A man who stepped on stage in a tailored suit and sang with his eyes closed, as if he were praying instead of performing. And that, more than anything, is what bothered them. "He's getting too comfortable," one of the men muttered. "He's crossing lines. He sings in our venues now." Their frustration wasn't about music. It was about visibility. About a black man filling seats in spaces that once shut doors in his face. Upstairs, the city buzzed. Downstairs, envy gathered like smoke. But what they didn't know was this: Harlem protects its own. And sometimes, protection doesn't knock, it just walks in. Elias didn't know about the basement that night. He was backstage at the Golden Crescent Club, adjusting his cufflinks in a mirror framed with cracked bulbs. The manager had warned him earlier. "There's talk," the manager whispered. "Ugly talk." Elias smiled softly. "People talked before I could read," he said. "Talking doesn't scare me." But the manager wasn't worried about talk. He was worried about money, contracts, pressure, boycotts. There were rumors of sponsors being leaned on, venues reconsidering bookings, investors backing out. A silent squeeze. No guns, no shouting, just quiet erasure. That's how reputations were destroyed. That's how careers disappeared. But Harlem noticed. Harlem always notices. 3 blocks away, beneath the awning of a small front-store pharmacy, stood a man holding a black umbrella, though the sky was clear. People nodded when he passed. Vendors straightened their posture. A kid selling newspapers lowered his voice. They called him Mr. Langston. He never raised his. He never hurried. He didn't need to. Power doesn't rush. Mr. Langston wasn't a politician, wasn't a club owner, wasn't a singer. But when a dispute threatened the neighborhood's dignity, his name floated into the conversation like gravity. And that evening, someone had whispered something in his ear. 6 men, basement, plans. Not violence, worse, isolation. They were planning to pressure venues to blacklist Elias, to label him too controversial, to make investors nervous, to paint him as a risk. A reputation doesn't need to be attacked loudly. It just needs to be doubted quietly. Mr. Langston adjusted his umbrella and walked. Back in the basement, a man tapped ash into a glass tray. If the Crescent drops him, others will follow. Investors hate uncertainty.
We just need to make him inconvenient." They nodded. One of them chuckled. "Let Harlem watch him fade." That's when the basement door opened. No slam, no dramatic crash, just a soft creak. The bulb above them swayed slightly. They turned, and for the first time that evening, they stopped talking. Mr. Langston stepped inside slowly, folding his umbrella with deliberate care. No anger on his face, no threat in his eyes, just presence. "Gentlemen," he said calmly. No one answered. He looked at the newspapers on the table, the circles, the ink marks, the tension. "Planning a concert?" he asked lightly. Silence. One man cleared his throat. "We're discussing business." "Ah," Mr. Langston nodded. "Business." He walked closer to the table. Not close enough to invade space, close enough to own it. "You know," he said steadily, "Harlem has survived many kinds of weather." He gently tapped the umbrella against his shoe. "Storms come, storms go, but this neighborhood, it remembers who tried to flood it." The room felt smaller. No yelling, no accusations, just truth. Mr. Langston looked at each man individually, slowly, carefully. If a man fills a room with music, and that music feeds families, lifts spirits, and pays workers, what exactly are you trying to silence? No one spoke. He leaned slightly forward. "Because if it's dignity, I assure you, that doesn't vanish quietly." One of the men shifted in his chair. "We're protecting our interests." Mr. Langston smiled faintly. "Interests are protected by building, not by shrinking someone else." Another long silence. He didn't threaten. He didn't name consequences. He didn't need to. Reputation in Harlem wasn't controlled from basements. It was earned in daylight. Finally, Mr. Langston stepped back toward the stairs. Before leaving, he paused. "If the Crescent drops him, 3 other venues will pick him up by morning." A few eyebrows lifted. "And if investors get nervous," he added, "others who believe in talent will replace them." He opened the door. "And if anyone here wishes to test how loyal this neighborhood is to its own." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The door closed. The bulb kept swinging, but something had shifted. Not fear, awareness. Upstairs, Elias stepped on stage. The curtain parted. Applause rose like a wave. He didn't know about the basement, didn't know about the umbrella, didn't know about the silence. He simply sang. And that night, the room was fuller than ever, because sometimes protection doesn't shout, it just shows up. The contract that was meant to break him. The next morning, Harlem woke up like it always did. Sunlight stretching across brownstones, vendors calling out fresh produce prices, the scent of coffee drifting from corner diners. But beneath that rhythm, something subtle had shifted. The men in the basement had not abandoned their plan. They had simply adjusted it. Pride doesn't disappear because it's challenged. It becomes quieter, more strategic. Instead of pushing venues to drop Elias outright, they decided to use something more polished, something dressed in paperwork and sealed with handshakes. They would offer him an opportunity too large to refuse, a touring contract backed by investors outside Harlem, a multi-city circuit that promised national exposure, radio promotion, and press coverage that could turn him from a rising star into a household name. It looked like elevation. It was designed as isolation. The contract arrived at the Golden Crescent Club in a thick cream envelope with gold lettering. The manager nearly trembled while holding it. "This is it," he told Elias backstage that afternoon. "This is the kind of deal singers wait their whole lives for." The numbers printed inside were impressive. Performance guarantees triple his current pay, accommodations in first-class hotels, exclusive booking rights in several major cities. There was only one quiet clause buried near the end. During the term of the agreement, Elias would be prohibited from performing in independent venues not approved by the contracting board. That meant no Harlem clubs, no Crescent, no late-night charity sets for community schools, no impromptu piano sessions at the community center. He would leave as Harlem's pride, and return as someone owned. Elias read every page slowly. He was not a man who rushed decisions, no matter how bright the opportunity looked. He had grown up watching his mother count coins at the kitchen table, had seen what desperation did to judgment. Fame had found him, yes, but humility had raised him. When he reached the clause, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled softly. The manager mistook the pause for excitement. "This changes everything," the manager whispered. Elias nodded gently. "It does," he replied, though not in the way the manager expected. Word of the contract moved through Harlem faster than newspapers ever could. Some celebrated, some worried. Older residents gathered outside the pharmacy where Mr. Langston often stood, umbrella resting calmly in his hand, even when skies were blue.
The night the champion walked through the door,